Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and privilege to have you joining me here today. This is one of the most fun shows we do because all we do is just do live, interactive, live talking, live chatting stuff, and that's what we're going to do today. Now, quite often what I like to do on Open Mic is take some live video questions and audio questions that you guys send in to me, and I'm going to forego those today on purpose. I got the technical issues worked out, but I do have a handful of like super chat and live questions that came in on a previous show that I really need to get through, because I promise you guys, if you send them in, they get answered, and I'm going to cover those first. And then after that, we're going to go to the current live questions that you guys who are watching right now are sending in. So, a couple things going on today. Did you hear about that crazy thing, 50 Nights at Freddy's? It's moving forward. I got a special video on that coming up just in about an hour and a half or so. Keep your eyes open for that on my YouTube channel. And I'm just finishing off Uncharted 4, because you know that yesterday I put up my review, my cutscene movie review of South Park Fractured But Whole. And a lot of you guys are asking me, John, you got to do Uncharted 4 too. So I am just about done getting through Uncharted 4. I'm going to have my Uncharted 4 cutscene movie review up tomorrow, so make sure you come back and check that out as well. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get to the questions that I didn't get a chance to get to a little bit earlier. We'll get through these ones first, and then we'll get to the live ones as well. So let's get started with this. The first question comes to us from Charlie Zakari, writes, do you need to see X-Men before Logan? No, I don't think so. Logan works as a standalone film, and they tell you everything really you need to know. But obviously, having seen the X-Men films, it adds a little bit more emotional layers for you. But I feel pretty good saying that you can walk into Logan cold and still really appreciate it. I know a couple of my friends who've done that, and you should be fine. Mr. Green Arrow writes, would you enjoy a George Miller Man of Steel 2? You know what I'm going to say? I don't care. If it's a good director, whenever you ask me a question, do you think X actor should be in X movie? Or what would you think about X director directing X movie? If it's announced, then I'll feel better about it. But otherwise, sure, why not? George Miller's a good director. So are 100 other guys. But if George Miller was announced as a director for Man of Steel 2, then sure, I'm fine with that. Adam K. writes, while I wish Logan got more Oscar love, I'm thrilled it's the first superhero film to get an adapted screenplay nod. It's a huge step for the genre. Not just adapted screenplay nod. Logan is the first superhero film, period, to get a screenplay nod. It is an amazing step in the right direction. I think there's a lot of people and fans of the comic book genre, Adam, who aren't taking a moment to really appreciate how big of a deal this is. This is a huge deal for the superhero genre in general. And while I would have preferred it to get a Best Picture nomination, while I really wanted Sir Patrick Stewart to get a Best Supporting Actor nomination, I am thrilled about its nomination for Adapted Screenplay, and that should be getting more attention. It doesn't have a chance to win, but I'm really glad it got that nomination. Ben Rayner writes, will there be a spacey cut of All the Money in the World on digital? Why would they do that? The only reason you put out a new cut is if you think it'll get more people buying it. People are not going to be buying a spacey cut. People would protest and all that kind of stuff. It would just create a lot of negative backlash for the film, so no. I do not suspect at all that Sony will be putting out a spacey cut of All the Money in the World. Ken Kane writes, powerful moment. Obi-Wan realizes he let Anakin survive. I was but the learner. What if he was learning his suit and the dark side? Vader and Kenobi? No. No. To me, when Vader says to Obi-Wan, I know a lot of people are trying to play semantics with it and try to find a loophole, but it's best to leave canon as it is. Vader was clearly referencing, the last time we met, you were the master, I was the learner. Now I'm the master. And that is pretty clear. And we could probably play semantics and loophole, but what if in a way he means this, and you did this, and you twisted this? Well then, if you do that, then what is canon anymore? Then nothing that we take for granted in the original trilogy will mean what we have always thought it means. Now you change the meaning of everything, and I'm personally not for that. That's just my opinion. I know some people would love it. I don't. I'm a little bit more of a purist in that sense. I would rather them just leave it as it is. Devontae Brown writes, nearly all PG-13 horror films I go into opening have disruptive teens, even with cops there. How should theaters handle it? Maybe only make R-rated horror. No. Only making R-rated horror is not the answer. That's not the answer at all. I sometimes get rowdy teens in my PG-13 horror movies, but honestly, it's not that often. Look, just in general, theaters need to do a better job of monitoring their theaters and asking disruptive guests to settle down or to leave. And that's true of not just the PG-13 horror-rated horror films that we get. That's for every film. Movie theaters in general need to do a better job of monitoring their theaters, addressing disruptive customers, and if they won't settle down, then asking them to leave. They just have to get more proactive than that. And that's not just with teenagers. That's with anybody. I've seen grown-ass adults, answer their phone 3 different times in one movie, right? That person needs to be asked to leave or asked, look, can you turn your phone off, please, sir? It's not just teens. So I think the bigger issue is just theaters have to get more proactive in doing that. It's not easy, but they have to figure out a way to do it. Lovell Richardson writes, love the show. Thank you so much. People were sensitive about Sansa. Talking about Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones, probably. Because dom violence hits close to home for viewers. Going through that shit where ultra-violence is like fantasy. Well, okay, so what Lovell is talking about is the other day we talked about how does Game of Thrones, or other shows, we just use Game of Thrones as the example. We weren't trying to pick on Game of Thrones. Does Game of Thrones glorify violence against women? And one of the big examples of that is, of course, Ramsay, right? Ramsay Bolton assaulting Sansa. It was horrific. But my argument was that Game of Thrones did not glorify that at all. It made him out to be a monster. This is vile. This is evil. And it had dramatic impact. Now, Lovell, you're not the first person to write to me, but, fantasy violence is one thing, but violence against, sexual assault is a real thing that has happened to some people. But, and obviously, I've never been through that, so I cannot relate. So I'm speaking, admittedly, a little bit from a position of ignorance. Okay, let me admit that up front. I have not been through it, so therefore I cannot fully relate with somebody who has. Clearly, okay? Let's just get that out there right first. As an audience member sitting in the stands, though, my question then becomes, does that mean we can't use human experiences in our storytelling that have actually happened to people? Because when you think about it, how many people have lost loved ones, family members, friends, or friends of friends in car accidents? How many people die in car accidents every year? Should movies and television never depict car accidents then? Because there are people out there, millions of people out there, who have been personally touched and affected by losing somebody or having somebody brutally injured or having somebody nearly get killed in car accidents. It's something people have really experienced. Should we never portray plane crashes in television shows or movies or in our storytelling? Because there are real people who have been really affected by that. Should we never portray illness in our storytelling? Cancer or whatever. Should we never portray illness in our storytelling? Because there are people who have seriously had their lives impacted and harmed in that way. Should we never depict murder in our television shows and movies? Because there are millions of people who've been affected and touched by murder. I'm simply saying, as long as the television show or movie to me does not glorify it, make it seem cool. Oh yeah, what Ramsay did to Sansa was cool. Look how cool it is, guys. As long as they portray it as the actions of a monster and don't glorify it, but rather paint it for what it is, then I see the narrative value of using real human experience in our storytelling. And again, I'm not the expert on that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just a little bit afraid, as if we say there's a line there, where does the line get drawn then? Murder? Accidents? Illness? Other crimes? Where do we draw that line? And so that's why I say, as long as it's handled correctly and it's not glorified, then I'm okay with using real human experience in our storytelling. But that's just me as a single audience member. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm not trying to tell anybody else how to think or feel. I'm just saying that's kind of my approach to it and how I feel about it. Anyway, I hope I made that clear. So anyway, good on you, and thanks for bringing up the point. Haskell420 writes, "Hi, John. Good morning. Why is it people/critics get angry when they see product placement in movies, when those same people want movies to be more grounded in reality? Thank you, and see you tonight on Weekly Hero." So this was a question that came out on Friday. Well, Look, I don't mind product placement. It's just when it becomes obvious that it's product placement. Like, that's the only time I get problem. Like, when it's so much, oh yeah, hi Susie, how you doing? You doing good, Susie? Oh, me? I'm doing good, Susie. Matter of fact, I just went out to AMC Theaters last night and had some delicious AMC popcorn with an AMC soda. I love my AMC theater, but I'm sorry, we were talking about your new job. Like, it's when it gets really blatant. Like, I don't mind if you pay attention in this season of 24, all the computer monitors are Hewlett-Packard computer monitors. Okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But then, yeah, you get some movies and TV shows are, you know, and it's just make it really blatant and obvious. They just got to handle it a little bit more subtly. That's all. I think that's when people get upset with, not that there is product placement, but rather when it becomes so obvious that it actually gets intrusive into the storytelling. When the product placement is so intrusive, it just inserts itself right into the narrative almost. That's when most people have a problem with it. At least that's when I have a problem with it, at any rate. Good question. All right. Jeremy DeLune writes, the last name is DeLon. Oh, DeLon. There you go. I said DeLune. Just helping you out after yesterday. Loving the show at work as always. Makes work endurable. I'm really glad I can be there to help you through your work day, Jeremy. Let's see. Anthony C. writes, why do you think Netflix movies are not great? Well, because it's tough to make. I say this all the time. It's very tough to make good movies. Making good movies is a nearly impossible task. So when good movies come out, that's why we celebrate them. Netflix movies are no different than that. But one of the other reasons a lot of the movies coming up on Netflix aren't so great, much like Cloverfield Paradox, is some people are just treating Netflix as a dumping ground for movies now that wouldn't otherwise cut it in movie theaters. So it's got the regular challenges that every movie has of trying to be a good movie. Plus, on top of that, it's got the extra little burden of being the dumping ground for some studios just to dump their movies on. Mike Thompson writes, got dragged to see 50 Shades the other day. I actually enjoyed the experience. Theater had luxury recliners. I was able to take a nice 2-hour nap. You know what? You probably found a better use for your 2 hours. I just hope your date didn't get pissed off at you because mine would have. The Crone Doggy writes, some critics lie to stand out, others to fit in. Again, Crone Doggy, to me, that's just people making excuses for critics not having the same opinion as them. And it's sad. There are some people, and I'm not saying you do this, but I'm saying it's sad that there are some people out this who find it easier, instead of just accepting, oh, I guess that film critic has a different opinion than me. They find it easier just to go, oh, well, that critic's just saying it to be different. Or that critic's just saying it to be like everybody else. It's so easy to make an excuse. To make excuses for why somebody, whether it's another film fan or a film critic, make an excuse for why that person doesn't have the same opinion than you, rather than just having enough self-esteem to go, oh, I didn't like something, but that person did. Okay. I guess film is subjective, and it just worked for them when it didn't work for me. Or it just didn't work for them when it did work for me. They find it easier just then to make excuse. Well, they're only saying that because of this. And I get tired of film fans that make excuses for other people having different opinions of movies than them. I mean, people got to get past it, man. People just got to get past that. It's lazy. Curtis Lopez writes, seeing how big of a hit Star Wars was in '77, adjusting ticket prices from then to now, how much do you think it would have made opening weekend worldwide? See, this is the thing, Curtis. I have this discussion with people all the time. When people say to me, why don't they adjust for inflation when doing all-time box office things? And what I try to explain to people, and it becomes really painful to do, is that inflation is just one changed factor. That's just one changed factor. And you can't just take one of the changed factors into consideration. If you're going to take one changed factor into consideration, then you've got to take all the other changed factors. The fact that, you know, when Star Wars came out in '77, 500 movies weren't being released every year. It was a different environment. When Star Wars came out in '77, there weren't 95 network television stations. When Star Wars came out in '77, there weren't 3 major brand of home video game console systems competing for the same entertainment time and entertainment dollar of the consumer. When Star Wars came out in '77, there weren't 3 other films opening against it in its same week. When Star Wars came out in '77, like, too many people just think, oh, well, all you have to do is just take inflation into consideration. You can't do that unless you're also going to take all the other variables into consideration. So really, like when you say adjusting ticket prices, well, it's impossible to just do that. You also got to take into consideration all the other variables of what a movie was going against in 77 compared to what a movie is competing against today are radically different. It's comparing apples to spaceships. It's a totally different thing. So you can't really just answer that question the way you've asked it. You know, it's a much more complex question than you might think right off the top. So it's impossible to say. It's absolutely impossible to say. It's an intriguing question for sure, but it's absolutely impossible to say. Alan Gonzalez writes, "Good morning, John. Here at work, could you provide me some tips on how to review a movie? Like what points I should review and all that. I would really appreciate it. Have an awesome day." Honestly, the best piece of advice I can give to anybody about reviewing a movie, whether it's reviewing a movie in a podcast, on a web post, in a video, whatever, or just talking to your friends, the best advice I can give is this. And this is the advice. This sounds simple, but almost everybody gets this wrong. Films are about the experience you have with them. And every film will give you a unique experience. Just communicate your real, authentic, true, honest experience that you had with the film. That's where everybody gets it wrong. Everybody thinks you got to dress it up and pretty it up and blah, 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 blah. But really, at the bottom line, the best movie reviews are the ones where you have a critic who just is really good at expressing and communicate their true experience that they had with the movie. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. Just really give a good, true representation of your experience with the movie. That is the most important thing I think anybody can do when it comes to reviewing a film. So start there. Because everybody's going to say, well, obviously, John, but that's where most people get it wrong. Too many people try to put together a presentation or whatever. Just communicate your experience with the movie. That's the most important thing you can do. That's the best advice I have at any rate. Other than that, I don't know. Jacob Lee writes, Trump biopic? I want to see that after his presidency, but it would be difficult to get the tone right, and to be fair and honest, it's going to be really tough. I mean, you know there are going to be Trump biopics. You know there are. I don't know how interested I would be in seeing it. Personally, there's just too much. I mean, everybody just looks at him one way or the other, and there's not a lot of middle ground. So I don't know that I would be all that interested in it, to be honest with you, unless somebody really effectively came along to do it. But then, you know, it's not going to make anybody happy. It's going to be a really divisive movie. If it shows Trump in a positive light, a whole ton of people are going to hate it. If it shows Trump in a negative light, a whole bunch of people are going to hate it. So what's the point? That honestly, seriously, what's the point? That's why I'm not all that interested. I know there are a lot of people who are interested, but they're only interested if they show Trump in the light that they want him shown in. If they don't show him in the light that they want him shown in, then they're going to hate it. So again, in an environment like that, I'm not sure I even would know the purpose of making it in the first place. Devontae Brown writes, how did Couch Jump ruin Tom's career? I barely remember it. Yeah, but Devontae, you got to go back in time a little bit. When Tom Cruise came out and did that wild, stupid jumping up and down on Oprah's couch, public perception of him, boom, went nosedived. And then I remember his War of the Worlds came out that Steven Spielberg produced. And I remember it did a lot worse than the industry was expecting it to do. And Tom Cruise was just the butt of everybody's jokes. There was a period of time there, and he was just the butt of everybody's jokes. And that didn't change until Tropic Thunder and the character of Les Grossman came along. Now a lot of people forget about it, but I remember so clearly being in that era of time that like it looked like Cruise's career was done. And that character, that role, Tom Cruise playing Les Grossman, completely saved his career. I'm 100% convinced of that. I completely believe that. Final one here before we go over to the live stuff. This one comes to us from Joe Rapazzo, who writes, Hi, John. What do you think of this messed up but funny double feature? First American History X, then Blazing Saddle. It's not a messed up double feature. It's a good hard-hitting movie. I love American History X, by the way. And followed it up. It's kind of like a good, 2 courses. Having like a really savory main meal and then a nice sweet dessert, right? It's a nice 1-2 punch. American History X, follow that up by something lighter that's going to make you laugh, and Blazing Saddles, great double feature. I think that one's great. Okay, with that out of the way now, let's go over to the live questions. I know you guys who are watching live have been pouring in a whole bunch of them. So let's get started with Aussie Nerd. And Aussie Nerd writes, I don't hate 50 Shades because it's a stupid movie about BDSM. I hate it because it's a stupid movie about a rapist pretending to be a BDSM. Well, listen, I'm not an expert on 50 Shades by any stretch of the imagination. I've seen the movies, but that's really all I know about it. I don't recall them making the character out to be that. Yeah, I don't. So I can't speak to that, to be honest with you, because that's not the experience I had with it. I don't think they portrayed him that way at all. So, yeah, that's all I can say. You interpreted it differently, clearly, but I interpreted it differently than you. Digoto1 writes, what are your thoughts on the Joker, Jerome character in Gotham? I think he's a pretty good Joker. You know what? I think I actually heard they're not going to say he's the Joker. It's okay. The Jerome character's pretty good. I'm just still not thrilled with Gotham, you know, as a show overall. So it's difficult for me not to have my perception of the show as a whole and separate that from the individual character. And I should do that. But I admit it's a little bit difficult to when I'm not overall thrilled with the show. Although this season has been not bad. Certainly, it's been taking steps in the right direction. The Jerome character, I've never been jumping up and down about him, but he's certainly one of the better parts of the show. I'll just say that. Sujith writes, in my opinion, Dunkirk should win Best Picture. The scope of the story, layered in 3 perspectives, can only be told through film. This is why film was invented. Visual storytelling at its best. Oh, it was great. Dunkirk was wonderful. It's not my pick. It's not even in my top 3. It certainly deserved to be nominated for Best Picture, absolutely. It's not in my personal top 3, but you know what, Sujit? That's the great thing about film. I think there are a lot of people out there who would love to see Dunkirk win. I think Dunkirk has a legit chance to win. I would put films like 3 Billboards. I would put films like Shape of Water. I would put films. There was a couple of films that I would put over Dunkirk myself personally, but it does have a legit shot at winning. And you and a lot of other people I know might be very happy come Oscar night. We'll have to wait and see. Junkari P writes, what's your opinion on Brad Pitt as an actor? He's a superior actor. He's not always in the best material. He doesn't always pick the best films to be in, but I do think he is an elite level actor. He's not in the top 3, top 4, top 5 working in the business, but he is an elite level actor. I think he's incredibly gifted and talented. He can play just about any kind of character. He brings a lot of charm and charisma to the screen, and he just knows how to make you lose yourself in whatever character he's playing. War Daddy was a great character. I loved his War Daddy character a lot. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on Brad Pitt. Thunder Knight 19 writes, minus his Batman movies, what are your thoughts on Joel Schumacher as a director? Not great, but you know what? Here's the thing. Joel Schumacher, no matter how many bad movies he puts out, he's the guy who directed Lost Boys. He's the guy who gave us Lost Boys. And because of that alone, he will always have a seat at my table. He will always be invited over to my place for dinner just because of Lost Boys alone. I love that movie. And he's the one who gave it to us. So there you go. 10013 writes, pardon me. Hey, John, I'm curious if there was a particular movie scene or moment in film that made you go, this is what I want to do. Thanks for answering. Well, probably, is Star Wars. Star Wars is the movie that kind of set the creative direction of my life. It is my earliest, you've heard me tell the story, it's my earliest childhood memory. My mom showing me Star Wars for the first time. It is by far the most influential thing, at least piece of pop media culture that's ever had any kind of influence on me. It's the most influential by far. So yeah, I'd have to see Star Wars was my North Star, I guess, in many ways. Sujith writes, saw some of your old AMC pics on Facebook, noticed Alicia Malone in it. She's such a sweet person. I follow her on YouTube, such a passionate supporter for indie and classic movies. I've enjoyed all of her movie recommendations. She's just top notch. You'll run out of words about how I think valuable a person, somebody like Alicia Malone is to any of the film discussion space. She's incredibly knowledgeable. She's charismatic. She's an effective communicator. She's just a treasure in our space. So I'm glad you follow her. More people should be following her. Trevor Johnson writes, "Hey, John, remember you mentioning you're doing the early morning workouts? Looking pretty jacked compared to the old AMC days. Keep it up, man." Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, back in the AMC days, there was a rough time for me because I was, obviously very heavy into MMA, working out, all that kind of stuff. And then I had 2 heart attacks in a Muay Thai class with James, the UFC fighter, James Sandman Irvin. I was in a class with him, and I suffered 2 heart attacks. And I won't go into the full story about it because many of you have already heard the story. But then it was all of a sudden, like I went through like 2 years of just being too afraid, or a year and a half of just being afraid to walk very much. Because there was about a 4-month period after that even walking for more than about 40 steps, I started to feel it and all that kind of stuff. And my weight ballooned, and I was hovering around like 235 to 240. Sometimes I think even peaked at about 245. And this was while I was doing AMC. And then near the end of my AMC tenure, I decided, okay, I gotta at least drop a few pounds here and get more confident. And I started going to my doctors more, and they cleared me and say, "Hey, John, your heart is perfectly healthy now. You can go run marathons if you want." So I got more into working out, dropped my weight down to about 225, then got a little bit more serious again, dropped it down to about 220. Just before Christmas, when Anne was away in Hong Kong for 2 months, I actually dropped another 10 pounds. I got down to 210, and I put about 10 pounds back on over Christmas. I'm back up to around 220 right now, but I'm getting my weight back down because Christmas holidays did that to me. But yeah, part of that is being back in the gym, up at 5:30, off to the gym every morning before doing the John Campea show. It's a great little thing that Ann and I have going, and we're having a good time doing it. And thank you for your words of encouragement. Nothing is better this is for all of you guys. Nothing is better for your friends who are trying to get dedicated to being back in shape than encouraging them when they're trying to get back into shape. Nothing is better than encouragement. So thank you for giving me your encouragement. I appreciate that, man. And yeah, back into my workouts. My routines have been getting pretty much back on normal to pre-heart attack days. It's going good. DKid19 writes, "Have you seen the anime My Hero Academia? It's incredible, great characters, animation, and story." No, I have not. I'll be honest with you, I've never even heard of it. But again, that's one of the great things about this show is now you've put this show on the radar for a bunch of other people who can now check it out. So thank you so much for that, D-Kid. Maximum Effort 44T writes, "What are some of your gripes with the Matrix sequels?" Well, I'm not going to go into full reviews of the 2 movies. I just think, and I'm one of the guys who actually, I like Matrix 2. I know a lot of other people don't, but Seraph and, the twins, and I liked Matrix 2. Not as much as Matrix 1, and I know a lot of people will crap on Matrix 2, but I happen to like Matrix 2. The third one, and what criticism you could give of the sequels, is that, just the first story felt very tight. And I felt they started losing that tightness, and they got a little bit more silly and a little bit more, what's the best word I can use for it? They got a little more theoretical in their concepts about what they were doing. That was a lot looser than a really tight package you had in the first one. And I think that just made the movies get away from them a little bit. So that's my quick thought on it. Andrew Hogue writes, "Thoughts on Scott Pilgrim versus the World?" I love Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Love it. One of the big highlights in my career actually was I used to throw an annual party at Comic-Con. And this one year that I threw a party at Comic-Con, Edgar Wright, the director of the film, and his whole main cast all came to our party. And it was great. And then later, that same thing, I got to do an award presentation with Edgar Wright and stuff like that. But I absolutely love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. A great example of, even though it was based on a pre-existing piece of material, it's such an original film. Yes, it's based on a pre-existing piece of material, yes, but it's so fresh and so different, and hardly anybody went out to support it. It's really a sad story. I wish more people saw that movie because it deserves to be seen. If you haven't seen Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, treat yourself. Go check it out. Adamus95 writes, "Just finished watching Gridiron Gang. What a criminally underrated movie. Dwayne is awesome." Dwayne has a couple of films that I think didn't get nearly the attention they deserved, and are films that, like, when I tell people, I think Dwayne is no longer just a former wrestler who acts. I think Dwayne Johnson is now legitimately a serviceable actor. And a lot of people will look at me sideways for that, but I find that those people didn't see movies like Gridiron Gang. They didn't see movies like Faster. which I thought he was actually quite good in. They didn't see the one, oh, what's the one where he's trying to get his kid out of prison? Oh, why am I forgetting the name of it? But it's these intermediate movies that Dwayne Johnson really showed he was improving more and more and more as an actor, to the point that I no longer think of him as a former wrestler who now acts. I think of him as a legitimately serviceable actor who is elevated because he brings more charm and charisma to the screen since Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? So he is underrated for sure. And that's one of the films that I think people overlook. Chris Warden writes, "Hey, John, I just want to use your platform to proudly announce that my hometown of Victoria, British Columbia is having its first ever Comic-Con on March 16th through 18th and would like to invite the John Campea Show to attend." Well, thank you so much. I love British Columbia, man. I love British Columbia. It's such, I've never lived there, but I've driven in there a few times and visited numerous times. I had family that used to live there. I love the province. I don't know that I have the money to just hop on a plane, fly to Victoria, and, you know, get a hotel and feed myself for that long. But I'll tell you what, I will keep an eye open for it. And who knows, maybe we'll do a meet and greet in BC if we can get people to come to Victoria, BC. Thanks for letting everybody know about that, Chris. Amin writes, "John, we have created an extension of the Patreon Facebook group called Campea's Film Club. It's like a book club, but for films. First film will be Birdman." Oh, Birdman's great. You know, it's funny because my Patreon supporters, part of my Patreon supporters is that we have a Facebook group that's just for the Patreon supporters. And there's great discussion that goes in all the time. And I noticed, actually, Amin, in my on the Facebook group that I think it was Ben that was the first one who instigated that. I think it's a great idea. And Birdman is a great film to start with. That's a good first choice. Thanks for letting everybody know about that, Amin. Folsom53 writes, "There are plenty of people skeptical with Alden Ehrenreich as Han. But why do you think virtually no one is skeptical with Donald Glover as Lando?" Well, because Donald Glover is cool. That's the thing. Everybody gives everybody a pass if they're cool and they like them. He's Childish Gambino. I mean, look, I'm a huge fan of Donald Glover, okay? I'm a bit, and I listen to a lot of Gambino's music, but it's because he's cool. You know, it is so funny to me that he didn't say a single word. There wasn't a single word spoken by him in the trailer. But I was like, oh, he's going to be so cool as Lando. Look at that, Lando. He's going to be so cool as Lando. Look at that trailer. Oh, he comes across as so cool. He didn't even say a word. Not a word. But it's Donald Glover. He's popular and cool. So everybody just gives him the benefit of the doubt. They don't know Alden Ehrenreich. Most people have not seen Hail Caesar. And like, I did not, Hail Caesar's not a good movie, but Alden Ehrenreich so good in that movie. I loved him in that film. Anyway, but that's why, you know, like, everybody gives him a pass. And look, Donald Glover, he's also really, really talented. I mean, I love him in Atlanta. I've loved him in the small things he's popped up in there. I wasn't a big Community fan, to be honest with you, but, you know, but he's cool, so everybody gives him the benefit of the doubt, which is fine, but we're just going to have to wait and see the movie when it comes out. I have all the faith in the world in Alden Ehrenreich. I really do. Jessica Tennis writes, thought Ann keeps the lights on. Thought Ann keeps the lights on. Oh, time for plug. That's right. So what I say when I go into my, usually every day when I go into my shameless plug of my Patreon campaign, I mention that it's the thing that keeps the lights on. When really it's Ann Campea who keeps the lights on. And she keeps my life in order and everything else as well. So yes, everybody owes Anne for everything. So there's just that. Chris Martin writes, "Any other news on Andy Serkis's Jungle Book? I'm very interested in seeing it. His motion capture as Caesar is amazing. Loved War for the Planet of the Apes." Yeah, but we've never seen him direct. Well, unless you saw he did that one film. He did actually a really great job with that Andrew Garfield film where he plays, it's the guy, it wasn't polio. What was the disease he has in that movie? Anyway, but it got some Oscar buzz in the whole bit. But the average audience has not seen him direct yet. So it doesn't matter how good he was as motion capture in War for the Planet of the Apes. Andy Serkis didn't direct that. He's directing this. True story. I got an invite to go see Andy Serkis's Jungle Book Origin, or whatever it's called now. I got an invitation to go see that this week. I can't go see it because my invitation includes this little clause: if you're somebody in the entertainment industry, you cannot come to this movie. So I'm like, why the hell did you send me an invite then? Anyway, so it's being screened in LA this week. this Jungle Book movie that Andy Serkis is doing. So I don't know if anything will leak out about that, but let's keep our ears to the ground because I am very curious about that movie. I'm very curious to see how that turns. Especially, it's odd that they're doing it in the after shadow of Jon Favreau's triumph with Jungle Book. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all turns out. But, you know, who knows? Maybe it'll be great. I Am Blue writes, privileged to be seeing Annihilation tomorrow, which is my first red carpet premiere. How do you recommend I get there? What should I expect? I'll just take an Uber there. Honestly, most premieres are not everybody arrives in limos and not like I mean, I take limos when I go to a Star Wars premiere, but most of the time, yeah, just take an Uber there and you should be fine. What to expect? Expect that if it says the movie's starting at 7, it'll really probably start at 7:45. Expect to have your phone taken from you. So don't even just leave your phone in your car because otherwise they're just going to take it from you when you get there and then you have to go back and get it back at the end of the movie, which can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Other than that, honestly, it's just like another movie going experience. You're going to go into a theater, the lights are going to turn off, they're going to play a movie, and then you're going to leave. So that's that. I am also seeing Annihilation this week. So fingers crossed it turns out better than the trailers have. Kel Sang writes, finally got around to watching me and Orson Welles. Great. Now I love Zac Efron as an actor, but I hate Orson Welles as a person. That's a double-edged sword, isn't it? And I'm really glad you checked it out because that's the go-to when people doubt the acting chops of Zac Efron. The one I usually go to is go watch me and Orson Welles and see what kind of caliber Zac Efron has as an actor. See what his natural chops are. He's not always in the best movies, no, but too many people confuse a bad movie with a bad performance. He's really quite good. He's really quite good. People still ha-ha and guffaw at me when I say, you know what? Zac Efron would not be a bad Wolverine, or Zac Efron would not be a bad this or that. People, ha, ha, ha. Watch how much talent he has. He reminds me a lot of Hugh Jackman, as a matter of fact. A guy, singer and dancer, all the talent in the world, good-looking dude, blah, blah, very physical, very muscular, very ripped. He reminds me a hell of a lot of Hugh Jackman. And everybody laughed and complained when Hugh Jackman was cast as Wolverine. The Broadway singer, the singer and dancer, that's your Wolverine? He's totally wrong. He's like 6'3". He's like blah, blah, blah. Everybody complained. No one's complaining now. I think Zac Efron's a really talented guy, and I'm glad you checked that movie out. Christopher writes, just sent in a super chat. Thank you so much, Christopher. I appreciate that, man. Herson writes, interest in collab video with Stuckman / John / Black Nerd. Nah, not really. To be honest with you, I just don't see the point. You know, I've done some stuff like that before, but there wasn't even a point. I mean, so even when Jeremy was living here and literally just around the corner from me, like I actually found Jeremy's apartment for him and he literally just lived around the corner for me. There was no point. Like Jeremy does his thing, Chris does his thing, I do my thing. I don't really see the point of doing a collab video. I just don't see the, other than it sounds like it's interesting, it really isn't all that much. And I did a few collab videos, you know, a couple of years ago, and really they got no more, they were no better than just the individual ones. So I don't see what the benefit would be for those guys. I don't see what the benefit would be for me. So nah, probably not. Not that I'm not a huge fan of those guys. It's just that I don't see the point. I don't see there being any value in doing it. Christopher writes, what do you think happened to the Doctor Strange sequel? They are already talking Spider-Man Homecoming 2 and Guardians 3 officially coming. What Doctor Strange sequel? They never announced a Doctor Strange 2, did they? They'll get around to it when they do it. They have a plan for their Spider-Man Homecoming. They have a plan for Guardians 3. Doctor Strange, they have a certain plan for him, but maybe it doesn't involve doing Doctor Strange 3. Right? And remember, they can only do so many movies a year. So when you say what happened to the Doctor Strange sequel, I don't think they ever put Doctor Strange 2 on the scorecard. I don't remember ever seeing that. So they just haven't done it. They've got different plans for the character. Maybe he dies in Avengers Infinity War. Who knows? But for whatever reason, they're not ready to talk about it or to do one yet. And whatever their plans are, they have their plans. And remember, they can only do so many movies a year. They are limited on how many they can do per year. So clearly these other movies have to take priority for now. Parzival writes, When are you seeing Game Night, Flashpoint directors? I was going to go see it tonight. Ann and I were supposed to go see Game Night tonight, as a matter of fact. But then she now has a conference call with China at like 7 o'clock tonight. So now we can't go. So I'm probably just going to see it on Thursday. Just like everybody else. Or next Thursday. I'll probably see it next Thursday, just like everybody else. I'm going to go see Black Panther again this Thursday. That's what I'm doing this Thursday. Folsom53 writes, do you like the documentary Some Kind of Monster? I can't remember it off the top of my head. I can't even remember if I saw it off the top of my head, so I can't really comment on that. Gizomac writes, hey, John, you beautiful thing. Was wondering if you were familiar with Mass Effect. Sending love from Australia. Well, I watched my friends play Mass Effect a great deal. I never played it myself, but I would sit down, hang out with my buddies, and watch them play Mass Effect an awful lot. And I know a lot of people have asked me to do a cutscene review of one of the Mass Effect movies. So I'll probably get around to saying that. So I'm not super familiar with it other than what I've watched my guys play. But it's a beautiful looking game for sure. Chris Martin writes, love Odin's quote in Ragnarok. Are you the god of thunder or the god of hammers? Also, Hela was an awesome villain. I thought Hela was a very good villain. I don't know if I would call her awesome. I mean, you do, and that's great. My opinion is, I don't know that I would call her an awesome villain. I think she was a solid villain. A solid villain for the movie. But I didn't get as much out of her as I do out of Killmonger. And the amount of depth in her that I get from, like, Loki. Or I even got more emotional connection and different layers out of Michael Keaton's Vulture. So I would say personally that Hela was a solid villain, but I wouldn't call her a great villain myself. But you're right. I love that line. Are you the god of hammers? I love that line in that movie. I really do. Van Rock Car Moore writes, how do you feel about Keanu Reeves as an actor? Keanu Reeves is an actor. First of all, he's a super cool guy. He is an actor that when he is in the right role for him, he can knock it out of the park. He was born for The Matrix. He was born for John Wick. When he's not in the specifically right kind of movie that suits him, he can come across as a subpar actor. When he's in the right kind of movie, in the right kind of fit movie for him, he can come across as a better than average actor for sure. So it's hit and miss with Keanu Reeves. I mean, put him in the right film, it can work really well. But if you don't, he doesn't have the talent level that, say, a Jake Gyllenhaal does, where, even if he's not quite the right fit in the movies he's in, he can still elevate the material. He's not that. But you put him in the right movie, like a John Wick, and he can totally own a movie, for sure. So I think definitely the definition of hit or miss is what I would give with Keanu Reeves. Michael Ginyard writes, are you an X-Files fan? As a matter of fact, I'm not. I liked the first movie okay, but I watched a whole bunch of the series. I watched it because it was okay to watch, but I'll admit I never was like an X-Fileite or whatever X-File fans call themselves. I was never really into it. And I haven't bothered watching any of the new stuff that they've done recently either. So despite the fact that I'm a fan of both David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, I loved Californication. I loved that show, especially the first few seasons. But I've just never really gotten that much into X-Files, to be honest. Chris Martin writes, favorite animated films of 2016, mine are Zootopia, Moana, Kubo and the Two Strings, and Jungle Book. You can't really classify Jungle Book because it's got a live action character in it. For me, easily Moana. Moana to me is by far the best animated film that year. Kubo and the Two Strings are certainly beautiful and had more depth to it. I didn't think it was as good as some people make it out to be. And I thought Zootopia was a fun, harmless, entertaining animated film. I didn't think it was great like a lot of people did. To me, heads and tails, Moana, from mythology, the humor of it, the connection to the characters, the chemistry between the on-screen characters, the music. I just thought Moana, heads and tails, was by far the best animated film that year. In my opinion, at any rate. I know other people disagree, and that's totally fine. Devontae writes, opening super chats are weeks old, not from today. Well, I did mention that some of the super chats were from previous shows that I didn't get around. They are not weeks old. They were like from Friday. But I did mention that they were not from today. I did say that up front, Devontae. Adam K. writes, have you ever felt a critic wasn't being truthful? Well, I mean, look, it's impossible to say unless you personally know the critic. Like I've talked to people, oh, that critic who said that, yeah, you can tell that's not what they really think. And I'm like, really? You know them personally? You've hung out with that critic? You've had lunch with that critic? You have, hung out and watched football games with that critic? No? Then how would you know? So look, there are a couple of times I've spoken to some film critics, friends of mine, who have said, they've still given their honest opinion, but they wouldn't give it as honestly. You know what I mean? Like, I've talked to, I remember this one conversation I had with a friend of mine who is also a film critic, who just hated this one movie, and it was a popular movie. So they were honest in their review that they gave it a negative review, but they opted to withhold just how much they hated it. They were truthful. They gave it a negative review, but they opted just to withhold a little bit how much they disliked it. And unfortunately, the fandom today is so toxic that I kind of understand why they did that. Still gave an honest review. They didn't like it. They gave it a thumbs down. Okay. They gave it a negative review, but they opted not to express just how much they didn't like it because they knew the backlash. And just the fact that he put up a review that was even negative got tons of toxic backlash. Tons of, and again, weak-minded fools making excuses. You're just saying that because of this and blah. No, he saw the movie. He didn't like it. He gave an honest opinion. And unfortunately, the toxic fandom that's out there today try to condition, and it is the mission of toxic fandom, to beat critics or anybody else into submission, to make them afraid to give an honest opinion. That's the mission of toxic fandom, is to make people afraid to give an honest opinion. Like the mission of toxic corporate zombie slave DC fanboys is to try to shame you into never wanting to say something negative about a DC film. Same is true of toxic corporate zombie slave Marvel fanboys. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the issue of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes up. And you guys know what I think of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think it's a very well done show. I keep watching it because I keep hoping it'll get great, but I don't think it's a very well done show. Aside from Clark Gregg, who's awesome in it, and Man Ning Wen is amazing in it. Or Ming Na Wen, I should say, who's amazing in it. But whenever that comes up, I get people who keep trying to shame me for saying that I don't like it. And what they're trying to do is condition me to be afraid to say something negative about something that they like. So if you ever do come across a critic whoever maybe wasn't coming across as 100% truthful, it's probably because there's a big group of toxic fandom that have tried to condition them to do that. And it's got to change. And you know me, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't care if you love and 100% agree with what I say. I don't care if you hate and 100% disagree with what I say. I don't care. All I care about is, can I look in the mirror and say, I was honest with what I thought? And as long as I'm honest with what I thought, I can live with whatever anybody thinks about it. But not everybody always can. So yeah, I knew there was one instance where one guy once still gave it a negative review, just didn't give it as honestly as he would have liked, because he knew he would get tons and tons of backlash. And sure enough, he did. Just for giving it a negative review in the first place, he got tons of negative backlash, which is a really sad commentary on the state of toxic fandom today. It really is. Where did it go? Wow, a whole bunch more. Hey, guys, at this point, I'm going to say I've only got like 15 minutes left, so if you've not sent in a super chat, cut off the super chats. No more questions sent in. I've got enough here to get me by, to get by here. So let's see. Where were we here? Danko Clock writes, I love the movie Her by Spike Jonze. Do you know if he's currently working on a movie? Spike, you know what? That's a very good question. Let me just look it up. Spike Jonze, IMDb. Let's see here. I don't know if he's got anything upcoming, to be honest with you, which is really sad if he doesn't. Let's see here. As a director, he's got like 97 credits. Video short. No, Her was the last thing that he directed. And there's nothing else on his list right now for anything he's got upcoming. That's kind of sad. He's such a good director. So I don't know. Maybe he's just more caught up in producing. He's producing a TV series called It's Supper Time. I'm not familiar with it. He's done a whole bunch of television stuff, actually, as an executive producer for the last 5 years, all of which are shows I've never heard of. The Last Shot, Nirvana, the band, the show, Fubar, Age of Computer, Most Extensivist. It's funny, all these shows he's worked on, I haven't heard of any of them. But yeah, nothing so far. I would love to see Spike Jonze direct more. I'm really glad you brought that up. All right, Chris Martin writes, Jeremy Johns and you are my favorite movie critics. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Jeremy is as a straight movie critic, he is, I think, the most entertaining movie critic out there. I really do. I don't think anybody's ever been able to do it in such a way that's just simply as purely entertaining to watch as he does it. So the fact that you count me in there, I'm very honored. Thank you so much. KJ Sandgreen writes, scenes from bad movies you still enjoy. Vader's first breath in episode 3 and Human Torch chasing Silver Surfer in FF2 are a couple of mine. Well, that's something I would have to think about. I would really have to think about that. I mean, the pod race scene in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, that's definitely one for me. I love the pod race. And I will always defend the pod race. Even though I hate that movie, I will always defend the pod race. I absolutely love that scene. President Evil writes, favorite Denzel action role? I say Man on Fire. Cressy's art is death, and he's about to paint his masterpiece. Love that flick. I also love that movie. But you know what? I also loved The Equalizer a lot more than most people did. I don't know why more people didn't appreciate The Equalizer as much. I had a great time watching The Equalizer. So Man on Fire would probably still be number one for me, but Equalizer for me would come in just under that. But I'm a little bit odd that way because I like that movie more than most people do. I admit it. Rick Keir writes, think you can make a video of your top 10 favorite movies of the past decade from 2007, 2017. Keep up the good work. I could, but honestly, I don't like making lists too much. I will do the odd list video. I will. But generally speaking, I don't like doing that because, again, people just get angry that you didn't list their film higher. And so I don't see a lot of the merit in doing it. It's something I'll think about. It's something I'll think about. I don't know if I'll do it, but it is something I will think about, Rick. Thanks for bringing it up. Ben Rayner writes, I watched Gotham Season 1. It was okay. I hated the Batman stuff, and I can't watch it anymore. A lot of people gave up on Gotham after Season 1. I know several of my friends who just totally gave up on Gotham after. I very nearly gave up on Gotham after Season 1. I thought Season 2 was an improvement, so I kind of hung in there. Season 3 also took a little step in the right direction. But I could see why you would give up on it after Season 1. I know a lot of people who did. You're not alone in that. I would say if you get some free time, explore Season 2 a little bit. See if it does it for you like it did for me, that it seemed to course correct a little bit better and start to head in the right direction. But it might not. But sometime, don't have to rush into it. Sometime, someday, give Season 2 a shot. See what you think. Sadi writes, in my opinion, Bucky / Pierce from Captain America Winter Soldier, underrated. Thoughts? I don't know. I don't know if Bucky was underrated. I think Bucky got a good amount of credit. I think he got as much credit as he was due. Pierce was a great character, but I think most people kind of said he was a great character. So I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think they were underrated. I think they got the right amount of praise for those movies. It's not like they were totally ignored. I think they got the right amount of praise for it, personally. Maybe you feel like they didn't, which is totally fine. I thought they did, though. Thanks for the question. All right, Carlos writes, thoughts on Passion of the Christ? You know what? I'm just going to take a pass on the question because no matter what I say, a bunch of people are going to jump down my throat. So, yeah, and it's just a movie that's not important enough to me to actually give my opinion on. So I'll say this. Much like almost all other Mel Gibson movies that he directs, it is a brilliantly made movie. It is. It's a brilliantly made movie. There's no getting around that. It simply is. I have a built-in prejudice, even though I come from a faith background, I have a built-in prejudice against faith-based movies or movies that revolve around faith issues. Even though I come from a faith background, I have always been against those types of movies. But there's no doubting it is a brilliantly produced movie. It just is. That's Mel Gibson does it. Regardless of what you think of Mel Gibson as a human being or as a person, dude is a top-notch filmmaker. Top-notch filmmaker. Aussie Nerd writes, are there any movies that you find morally reprehensible, like 50 Shades being about a billionaire using his money and power to emotionally and physically abuse women? I never got... Again, Ozzy, you seem to be on a mission to try to trash these movies. I never once found that the character, as he was portrayed, was ever abusive to women. What was he into some kind of role play stuff? But yeah, but the way the movie presented it was only with women who wanted to do that, who were very explicit in their desire to participate in that. And on that level, I just disagree with you. The only movie I can really think that I found really morally reprehensible was the movie with Johnny Knoxville called The Ringer. Because I understood that The Ringer, what they were going for was to show like Special Olympians, particularly like Special Olympians with certain mental handicaps, as just being another one of the guys. And that's what they were going for. But I was very uncomfortable in the movie because I felt they were failing at it. And what that movie felt like more to me was, ha, let's laugh at the mentally handicapped guy. Ha. That's just what it felt like to me. And I was really uncomfortable with it. I knew their motives were better, but the execution was so bad that it felt very uncomfortable to me. And it's one of the only films I've ever walked out of. So that's one to me that kind of stands out to me. Leonardo Fonseca writes, hey John, recently you said Pearl Harbor was crap. Would you consider to make a review? No, what would be the point of me making a review? Who's going to watch a movie review of Pearl Harbor, a movie that came out 15, 20 years ago that nobody even talks about anymore? So I could put in 3 or 4 hours of making, editing, uploading a review on something and get 3,000 views. There's just no value in it for me to do a review like that at this point. So probably no, I won't do a review for it. Angel Chang writes, Pearl Harbor it's crap. There you go. There's your review. Charlie writes, thoughts on Burbank for a new couple moving to LA. Oh, tell you what, Charlie, when I moved to LA, I lived in a couple of places. I thought it would be so cool to live on Sunset Boulevard. So when I first moved to LA, I lived on Sunset Boulevard, and I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world. And it was terrible. I hated living right in Hollywood. I lived in Glendale, which was definitely better. I lived in a couple of other places, and then I ended up in Burbank. And I got to tell you, I love living in Burbank. I really do. It's clean. It's safe. There's tons of things to do. So many restaurants. Some of the best movie theaters are right here. Everything's in walking distance. And I'm a 15-minute drive from Hollywood. So when I need to go into Hollywood, I'm really close. It's expensive to live here. Make no mistake, it's expensive to live here. I get angry when I watch like HGTV and I watch these home improvement shows, and you got these people talking about this 5-bedroom house on 3,000 or 30,000 square foot lot with 3,000 square feet of living space and a 3-car garage. They're asking $198,000. And I want to throw pillows. I do. I throw pillows at my TV. I go, fuck you. I get so mad because in Burbank, I swear to God, like Ann and I were trying to find a house to live in Burbank. And it's like the best thing we could find is like a 2-bedroom house with like 890 square feet. So smaller than our apartment is like $700,000. And it's like, you find a 2-bedroom apartment in Burbank is like, oh God, I mean, you're paying $2,200, $2,300, $2,500 for a month for a 2-bedroom thing in Burbank. And it's like, we're screwed because Ann's job is like a 10-minute drive from here. And I don't want her, you move much further away. You're talking about an hour-long commute because of LA traffic. And I don't want my wife spending 2 hours a day in a car. And it's brutal. But if you can find the right place, find a reasonable apartment in Burbank, I think you'll be very happy. I got to tell you, I really enjoy living in Burbank very, very much. It by far is my favorite place I've lived in since living in LA. So that's my thoughts on Burbank. Let's see. Last couple of ones here. Goku on DBZ writes, What's your thoughts on my two favorite sports films, Remember the Titans and Jerry Maguire? Would love to hear your thoughts. Like them both. Remember the Titans is great. Jerry Maguire, I mean, show me the money. It's got some iconic classic stuff. I like those movies very much. Neither one of those are near my favorite sports movies of all time. I mean, we're talking about things like Mystery Alaska with Russell Crowe. I love that movie. Miracle, Warrior, and of course, Best of the Best with James Earl Jones and Eric Roberts. The martial arts film. I love that one too. So yeah, I very much enjoy Remember the Titans and Jerry Maguire. Absolutely. But they're not quite my top 5 favorite sports films. Even if I thought about it, I could probably think of a few others. Slapshot. Of course, Slapshot. There's another one. Some great sports movies, man. And then of course, Bull Durham, Major League. There's a bunch of really good baseball ones. I mean, yeah, so many good sports movies. 80s Nostalgia Guy writes, thoughts. Joaquin Phoenix and Leonardo DiCaprio Joker. Leonardo. I'd go Leonardo. He's just the better actor. Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor. Leonardo DiCaprio's in the top 3 or 4 best in the world right now. So I'll usually lean towards the better actor. If I had to pick between those two, and either one is a great choice. Either one is great. But if I was the producer and I had to pick one and they both were willing to do it, I'd go Leonardo. Adam K writes, Childish Gambino, better actor, singer, or rapper? Better rephrase it. Better rapper. Better rapper. I think he's a solid actor. I don't think he's a great actor, but I think he's solid. And he's only going to get better. But he's a great rapper. He's already great at that. So what's he best at? He's best at rapping. Matthew Leach writes, the anime film Perfect Blue you got recommended the other day was used as inspiration for Black Swan, but people say Aronofsky ripped it off. Interesting. Matthew then follows up by writing, thoughts on December 2019 being stacked already with Star Wars and Jumanji 3 and Masters of the Universe. If Wonder Woman 2 stayed in December, would it be considered a tight month? Well, first of all, I have my doubts. Look, Masters of the Universe just lost its director again because it looked like for a while that David Goyer was going to direct it, and now he's opted out of it. They don't have a director. It's next December. I have my doubts this movie is coming in December of 2019. I really believe it's going to drop out. So I really don't think that December of 2019 is probably going to be all that packed, especially since Wonder Woman moved out of it, which was, I think, the right move for them to do from a business point of view. So I think it was the right move, but I just don't think, I don't think it's going to be all that tight of a month. I think it'll be okay. And Matthew Leach, final question, gets the last one today. Do you ever keep count of the films you watch per year? I've been pretty proud of the numbers. No, I never keep count, but what I sometimes do around December is I open up Box Office Mojo, and I open up all the box office films of that year, and I go down and I count how many I've seen, and I've seen a lot. I mean, but that's not saying anything. It's my job. It's my job to watch and talk about movies. So never really absolutely keep count on that note. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for participating, all the recommendations, thoughts, and opinions that you guys have shared, some of which I agreed with, some of which I disagreed with, but that's the best part of the show, is we talk about things we have different opinions on, and I'm so glad you guys came along for the ride. Of course, Open Mic will be back on Wednesday because tomorrow is Tuesday, which means it's Star Wars Talk Tuesday. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. LA time. That's 6 p.m. on the East Coast. We've got Star Wars Talk Tuesday next week. Then Open Mic will be back on Wednesday, and we will be back to take... I've got a whole backlog of video questions you guys have sent in. I'm looking forward to using a bunch of those. That will be back again on Wednesday. All right, guys, don't forget, leave a comment in the comment section below. Click the thumbs up button, and let me give my little shameless plug, of course, my Patreon campaign. Guys, the thing that keeps the lights on around here is, other than Anne, is my Patreon campaign. Do me a favor, if you enjoy hanging out with us here and you enjoy watching the videos on the channel, head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea, where you'll find out 3 things. Number 1, find out what it means to be a Patreon supporter. Number 2, how being a Patreon supporter keeps the lights on around here, makes these shows possible. And number 3, what benefits there are to being a Patreon supporter. As a matter of fact, if you're a team level supporter, we provide audio only podcasts of these shows as well, so you can listen to them in the car or at the gym, and that's for our team level supporters there. Anyway, go over to the website and find out, and maybe you'll want to become a Patreon supporter too, and if you do, that's awesome. Thanks so much for that. You guys can follow me on social media, on Facebook, and of course on Twitter, simply at John Campea. You can see that written right there. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for being here and being a part of my day. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.